You want to know what really keeps wealthy people wealthy. It is not some secret formula. It is not a hedge fund on speed dial. It is not even intelligence, because I have watched some of the smartest men I ever met get wiped out, some of them twice, a few of them 3 times. The one trait that separates the people who walk out of every economic storm richer than when they entered it is that they recognize the storm before it had a name. And right now, as I sit here in 2026, I can tell you plainly that I do not like what I see. I have not liked it for a while. What worries me most is not the storm itself. Storms come and go. They always have. What worries me is how many people are standing outside without a coat, smiling at the sky, insisting it will not rain. Let me say something more directly than I usually do. I spent much of 2024 and all of 2025 quietly selling, quietly building cash. Quarter after quarter, the pile got larger. By the time I stepped away from running Berkshire at the end of last year, that pile was approaching $400 billion. That money was sitting in short-term treasury bills doing very little that impressed Wall Street. People said the old man had lost his nerve. They pointed to the AI surge, the Magnificent Seven, the SP 500 roaring ahead, and they said I was missing it. Sitting on the sidelines scared, I was not scared, I was waiting, because most people misunderstand the game entirely. The game is not about who makes the most money when the sun is out and everybody feels like a genius. The game is about who is still standing, still liquid, and still thinking clearly after the tide goes out, and the tide always goes out, every single time. I have spent my whole adult life watching tides, and I can promise you this much. Every bull market eventually hands the baton to something uglier. Every stretch of irrational excitement eventually runs into the cold arithmetic of reality. That is not pessimism. That is arithmetic. And arithmetic has no interest in your feelings. So I want to walk you through what I see, not to frighten you. Fear is a terrible counselor. Fear is the enemy of good thinking. And good thinking is the only weapon worth carrying into a downturn. But I do believe that if you take what I am about to say seriously, if you sit with it and actually act on it, it can change where you stand financially, not just this year, but for the rest of your life. Let us begin with what is actually happening. Moody's Analytics put recession odds near 50% earlier this year. JP Morgan had them at 40%. Goldman Sachs, which has a habit of leaning optimistic, still put them at 30%. Now, if you look at those numbers casually, you might say to yourself, well, that means a recession probably will not happen. That would miss the point completely. The point is not whether a recession arrives by a specific date on a calendar. The point is that we are living inside an economy that is a great deal more fragile than most people are pricing in. The leading economic index has been falling. The labor market lost 92,000 jobs in February after years of modest gains. Small businesses, which remain the backbone of American employment, are the most pessimistic they have been since the pandemic. Consumer sentiment has been slipping for months, even while people kept spending as if the floor beneath them were solid. The housing market, according to economists I respect, has already moved into its own private recession. And then there is oil. The conflict in Iran, a war almost nobody was seriously talking about a year and a half ago, has pushed oil prices into territory that serious economists will tell you has preceded nearly every major post-war recession. Oil does not merely make gasoline more expensive. It leaks into everything. It raises transport costs. It raises heating costs. It raises manufacturing input costs. It acts like a tax on the entire economy, paid by everybody, and felt most painfully by the people least able to absorb it. I am not telling you this so you panic. Panic is what the other fellow does. And when he panics, he pays dearly for it. In 2008, ordinary investors sold near the bottom. They locked in some of the ugliest losses of their financial lives, not because the market forced them to, but because they had no plan, no cushion, and no clarity. Then they stood off to the side and watched the recovery make other people wealthy. I was buying in 2008. I put $15 billion to work in businesses that had been beaten down by fear, not by any permanent impairment in long-term value. I bought Goldman Sachs on a Sunday morning. I bought General Electric when the whole thing looked like chaos. The reason I could do that was not genius. It was not luck. It was preparation. I had the cash, I had the patience, and I had spent enough time thinking about the difference between price and value that the noise could no longer bully my judgment. When everyone around me was asking whether this was the end, I was asking a different question. What is this business likely to be worth in 10 years? If the answer was far more than what the market was offering it for that day, I bought that as the whole game. And I want to help you build the mindset that makes that possible, not just the mechanics, so we will get to those. I mean the deeper foundation underneath the mechanics, the way of thinking that keeps your hands steady when the room starts shaking. Let me start with what I think of as the illusion of prosperity. I have seen the same story over and over. A person begins earning more money. Their lifestyle expands right alongside it. A better apartment, a newer car, restaurants 3 nights a week instead of 1 subscriptions breeding in the background like rabbits, clothes that signal something to the outside world about how far they have come, and they feel good about it. They feel like they are doing life correctly, like they work for this, like this is exactly what the extra money was meant for. I understand that feeling. But I want you to ask a harder question. What happens if the income stops tomorrow? How long can that person last? And I do not mean barely scraping by begging, selling furniture, and pretending that is resilience. I mean last comfortably, last with their judgment intact, last without desperation getting into every decision they make. For most people, the answer is between 1 month and 3 months. Some cannot last 30 days. And these are not necessarily foolish people. They are not all irresponsible. Many were simply never taught the difference between what you earn and what you build. They were never taught that lifestyle is a cost, not an asset. The car in the driveway is not wealth, it is depreciation. The vacation posted online is not a portfolio, it is a withdrawal. The wealthiest people I have known, and I have known quite a few, almost all had one quality in common. They lived far beneath what they could afford, not because they were stingy, not because they hated life, but because they understood a fundamental truth. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is where wealth is born. That gap projected over years and decades becomes freedom. It becomes options. It becomes the ability to say yes when everyone else is frozen and to say no when everyone else is panicking. That gap is everything. Now let me talk about debt. Debt destroys that gap faster than almost anything else. I do not want you to think about debt as a number on a screen. I want you to think about it as what it really is. It is a claim on your future labor. Every dollar you owe represents work you have already promised to do. It is time borrowed from a future version of you who has no idea what conditions will look like when the bill comes due. And the interest on that borrowing is a tax on your future that compounds just as faithfully as an investment compounds, only this time it compounds against you. Take something simple. A $4,000 credit card balance at 22% interest, paid off slowly with minimum payments, will wind up costing you well over $8,000. You paid double for whatever you bought. But even that is not the full cost. That extra $4,000 did not merely vanish. It was stolen from your future. If that same $4,000 had been invested in a plain index fund and compounded at a historical 10% for 20 years, it could have turned into something like $27,000. So the true cost of that one credit card balance is not $8,000, it is $27,000 or more. And that is one card, one balance. I have watched compound interest perform miracles in one direction and devastation in the other. The mathematics do not care which side you stand on. And when the economy slows, when hours get cut, when business weakens, the debt does not slow down with you. Interest keeps ticking, minimum payments keep coming due, people enter a downturn already behind, and the downturn drives them further behind. That is not a rough patch. That is a spiral. And spirals are difficult things to climb out of. So if you take one message from me today, take this one: get lean, not because I want you to live poorly, I do not, but because lean people are free people. Lean people have options. Lean people can still think clearly when the world around them is losing its head. And clear thinking in a recession is more valuable than any stock tip you will ever hear. That leads me to one of the most misunderstood truths in all of finance. The market is not a mirror of the economy. I want that to land. The market is not the economy. These are two different systems, running on different clocks, responding to different forces. The economy is jobs, output, earnings, spending, manufacturing. The market is sentiment, fear, greed, hope, panic, the collective emotional weather of millions of participants reacting to headlines, rumors, posts, and whatever the fellow next to them is doing. In the short run, the market is a popularity contest. In the long run, it is a weighing machine. Eventually, the weight wins. This matters enormously right now because the market spent much of 2024 and 2025 in a euphoric state. The Magnificent Seven, those AI-adjacent technology giants, came to represent more than a third of the value of the S&P 500. Think about that. 7 companies out of thousands, more than a third of the total, and they were priced at levels that required not merely strong growth, but extraordinary growth, almost flawless growth, sustained for years simply to justify the prices investors were paying. When a stock trades above 30 times earnings, perfection is already in the price. That is not investing. That is hope wearing a necktie and carrying a spreadsheet. Now, let me be fair. Artificial intelligence is real. The productivity effects may be very real. I am not dismissing what that technology might do over the next half century. But I have lived through this movie before. I watched the internet boom in the late 1090s. The technology was real then too. The internet absolutely changed the world. And still, investors who bought near the peak in 1999 and 2000 often waited 12, 15, sometimes 17 years just to break even. The technology was right. The price was disastrously wrong. And price is everything. Price is the one variable you actually control when you buy an asset. For decades, I have believed that it is much better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. But in parts of this market, people have been buying ordinary companies at extraordinary prices simply because everyone around them was doing the same thing. because recent history rewarded it, because saying otherwise makes you sound out of touch. I have been called a dinosaur before. That does not trouble me. Patience does not need defending. Now let us get practical. This is the point where most financial advice fails people. It offers insight, but not instruction. I want to give you both. The first thing I would do is the least glamorous and the most important. I would find out exactly where I stand. Most people operate with a foggy sketch of their finances. They know approximately what they make, approximately what they spend. They move through the space between those two numbers in a kind of polite blur. They do not look too closely, because looking too closely can be uncomfortable. I understand that. But the only financial problem guaranteed to worsen is the one you refuse to examine. Sit down and build the real picture. Every monthly expense, every subscription, every debt, the balance, the rate, the payment. And then answer one very direct question. If my income stopped tomorrow, how many months could I maintain my life with what I have in liquid savings right now? If the answer is less than 6 months, that is the only problem you solve until it is no longer true. Not investing, not chasing opportunities, not optimizing a portfolio. You build the 6-month cushion. That is the first job. A cash cushion is not just money, it is time. And time in a downturn is priceless. Time to think, time to wait, time to make the right move. Instead of the desperate one, when recessions destroy people financially, it is usually not the recession alone doing the damage. It is the sequence of decisions that follows, the lost job that takes 4 months to replace, the emergency expense that shows up at the worst possible time, the investment that has to be sold when it is worth the least because there is no other option. Cash keeps you from getting cornered, and not getting cornered is half the battle. After that, I would eliminate the bleed list, every debt in order of interest rate from highest to lowest. The highest rate is where compounding is working hardest against you. Attack that first. Even an additional $50 a month directed at the ugliest debt changes the path. While you are doing that, list every recurring charge, every quiet little leak in the hull. Cut what does not genuinely improve your life. You will be surprised how much money has been leaving without your explicit consent. Then I would automate the right behavior. Whatever you can save, even if it is modest, set it to move on payday before you have time to negotiate with yourself. The research here is clear and the logic is simple. A decision made once in a calm moment always beats a decision made over and over again in moments full of noise and temptation. Build the system so the right move is the default move, and then only then I would prepare to buy, not necessarily today. Valuations in portions of this market still look stretched to me, but prepare, build your watch list. Know the businesses you would want to own at the right price. Study their competitive positions. Study management. Study the balance sheet. Know what they are worth so that when the price reflects fear rather than value. And that day will come. You do not need to guess. You already know what you are looking at. And you can move while others are frozen. Here is the truth. Most people never get to enjoy. Recessions are among the greatest wealth transfer events in modern history. Every decade or so, the market holds a clearance sale. Good businesses, real businesses, with earnings power and durable advantages, go on sale at prices that would have sounded absurd during the good times. Not because the businesses suddenly became worthless, because frightened sellers need liquidity. And whoever is sitting on the other side of that transaction with cash patience and clear thinking is the one who gets rich. I want you to understand this deeply because it cuts directly against human instinct. When prices fall, everything in your body says run. The headlines scream disaster. The conversation around you turns emotional. And the correct response, the one that has built fortunes over and over again, is to look at a falling price in a good asset, the same way you would look at a lower price on any product you already wanted. You would be pleased, you would buy more. You would not ring your grocer asking whether bread had become dangerous just because it was on sale. You would fill the cart. The reason people fail to do that with investments is that they confuse price with value. They think a lower price means the thing itself has become worse. Sometimes that is true, but in a genuine panic, when fear rather than fundamentals drives selling, the value may stay right where it was while the price drops like a stone. A Coca-Cola bottler does not lose its economics because television anchors look worried. A railroad does not lose its moat because sentiment turns sour. The earnings will still come, the dividends will still come, the value remains, temporarily marked down for reasons that have very little to do with the business. That is when you buy, and you only get to buy if you prepared beforehand. Now I want to talk about something I think is not discussed enough. Your attention. We live inside the most sophisticated attention harvesting machine in human history. Your phone, the news, social media. Every one of these systems has an incentive to keep you engaged. And the best way to keep a human being engaged is fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of being late. Fear of a crash. Fear of a rally happening without you. Fear of getting it wrong. Fear is fuel for attention, and attention is money. So the louder the coverage becomes, and it will get very loud in a downturn, the more important it is to ask a simple question: who benefits from my panic right now? The answer is almost never you during market stress. I reduce my consumption of financial news, not because information does not matter, it does, but because there is a vast difference between information and noise. And in a crisis, noise overwhelms information by a huge ratio. For every useful fact, there are 100 pieces of amplified fear designed to keep your eyes locked on the screen and push you toward a decision that benefits somebody else. I have watched people sell wonderful businesses at 30 cents on the dollar because a man on television convinced them the world was ending. The world kept going. Their wealth did not. So here is a simple practice. Limit your financial news intake. Once a day is plenty. Choose sources that focus on fundamentals, not emotional temperature. And after every piece of financial media you consume, ask yourself whether it changed your estimate of a business's long-term value or whether it simply changed your mood. If it only changed your mood, close the screen, set the phone down, go back to what you know. What businesses do I own or want to own? What are they likely to be worth in 10 years? Does this headline alter that? Usually the honest answer is no. Now let me bring this down to what I consider the real foundation underneath all of it. Wealth is not the accumulation of stuff. Wealth is not merely the number on a statement. Though the number matters, wealth, properly understood, is freedom. The freedom to choose how you spend your time, the freedom to reject bad opportunities, the freedom to say yes to great ones, the freedom to think slowly when the world around you is demanding that you react quickly, the freedom to hold what you own while others are being forced to liquidate. That is what money, properly managed and properly protected, actually buys. And that freedom, the real kind, not the one advertised online, is built in quiet moments. The moment you refuse to upgrade the car, the moment you automate the savings transfer before you can spend the money, the moment you pay down the debt that has been bleeding you in silence, the moment you resist the seductive story that says you must be fully invested right now. Today, at any price, those choices are not glamorous. Almost nobody applauds them, but that is where the game is won. I have lived in the same house since 1958. I paid $31,500 for it. I drive a modest car. A good morning for me is still a McDonald's breakfast. And the newspaper, people have spent decades studying my stock picks, my holdings, my deals, my strategy. But if you want to understand how I have done what I have done, that house tells you more than most portfolio analyses ever will. I am not attached to possessions. I am attached to principles. I am attached to thinking, and nobody can confiscate that. Now I want to close with what I believe is the most important message in this entire conversation. The wealth gap that opens up during a recession is not created during the recession. It is created in the months beforehand, in the quiet period when things still look mostly fine from the outside, when the headlines are not yet screaming, when preparation still feels optional. That is where we are. And the people who will come out ahead are making decisions right now. Small decisions, boring decisions, powerful decisions. They are cutting unnecessary spending. They are building cash the same way a wise man builds a levee before the water rises. They are paying down debt. They are learning what they own and what they want to own. They are arranging their financial lives so that when the moment comes, when the sale finally arrives, they are ready to act instead of scrambling to survive. In every recession I have ever studied, the same transfer takes place. The unprepared sell to the prepared fear, transfers assets from weak hands to strong ones, and the question of who ends up on which side of that trade is almost never about brilliance, luck, or elite connections. It comes down to what somebody did or failed to do in the quiet months before the storm, whether they were willing to look honestly at their situation while looking was still optional, instead of waiting until it became unavoidable. I am 95 years old. I have watched more cycles than most people will see in several lifetimes: wars, oil shocks, bank failures, crashes, pandemics, political chaos in every flavor, and I can tell you with total confidence that the people who prepare are rewarded always. Maybe not instantly, maybe not on the schedule they wanted, but preparation is always rewarded. The market is a weighing machine, and patient people on the right side of value eventually win. So if I were starting over, this is exactly what I would do first. I would know my number. I would calculate precisely how many months of expenses I have in liquid savings right now. No spin, no rounding, no comforting lies. If it is under 6 months, that becomes the only problem I solve until it is fixed. Second, I would eliminate the bleed. I would list every debt by interest rate, from highest to lowest, and I would attack the most expensive claim on my future first. Even a small monthly overpayment changes the path at the same time. I would list every subscription, every auto renewal, every silent outflow, and cut the ones that do not truly improve my life. Third, I would automate the behavior. Whatever amount I could save, I would move it automatically on payday before I had a chance to spend it. One calm decision, systematized, beats 100 emotional decisions made in the moment. And fourth, I would get ready to buy. Not blindly, not carelessly. I would build the watch list, study the companies, understand what they are worth, so that when prices reflect fear rather than value, I do not need courage. I only need execution. That is it. 4 things, not glamorous, not complicated, completely transformational if you actually do them. The storm may come, it may not come on the schedule anyone predicts, it may not even look the way anyone expects, but the preparation works no matter what the scenario turns out to be. Cash is always useful. Low debt is always an advantage. Clear thinking is always superior. And patient, disciplined investors buying good assets at sensible prices have always, over time, won. I am not offering this as a warning. I am offering it as an invitation. An invitation to be ready for once, to be the person who already has the coat on when the rain starts, to be the person who looks back 2 or 3 years from now and says, I saw it coming, I prepared, I acted, and I am better for it. The work is yours, the time is now, and the outcome, more than you may believe at this moment, is still very much in your hands.